Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I'll tell you what, today we've got an awesome conversation with not one awesome guest, but two awesome guests. And what I love about their story is that if you want to see two business partners who are making a hugely positive impact on the world and on their industry and on their clients, while also having very complementary skill sets, then you're in for a treat because today's guests totally align with all of that. So let me tell you a little bit about them. So our guests are Jennifer, Reza, and Ildiko Mezei. Both of them together are the co-founders of MezRe Consultants. And what they do is they provide a host of management consulting services, including workshops, specialized trainings, relationship management, leadership development, and mental fitness. I love that phrase from them, to name just a few. Their expertise provides clients with a fully customized assessment and recommendations for key problem areas, including, these are big problems that we all face, employee retention, employee satisfaction, company culture, and so much more. Companies and corporations of all sizes benefit from their services due to their customized approach and diverse skill set. They believe that no two companies are alike, and we're going to go deep into their methodology and how they approach all of these different projects from the awareness and the assessment perspective to helping affect change inside of companies. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Jennifer and Ildiko. All right, ladies, I am so excited that you're both here with us today. To both of you, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and thank you for that awesome intro. I think your enthusiasm does so much, but it just sounded really great coming from you to hear that intro. So thank you.
No, honestly, it's easy because you two are both super passionate about your work. So the more that I've had to research your work and the more that I see all the amazing things you do, it gets me excited. And I have the coolest job in the world because I just highlight amazing entrepreneurs. We're going to start though. Take us beyond the bios. I know about your backgrounds, but share it with the listeners. What's your short story of how the heck you both got here?
Okay, so first of all, I'm apologizing. I'm a little sick. So apologizing for my voice. I was born and raised in Hungary. I came to the US in my 20s. I learned English. I worked at different companies. I worked in the building engineering industry. And I decided to go study psychology. So after I learned English and during learning English, I studied psychology and counseling. After I had my child, I went to work for a company in the mental health industry. That's where I found my partner and my lovely friend, Jennifer.
Yes. Yeah. So glad you came all the way from Hungary to be with us and to be with me, my comrade. So my name is Jennifer and I'm born and raised in California. I've been here my whole life. And from the get-go, pretty early on in my career, I started in the field of psychology. It kind of became really clear earlier on that was my passion, just being fascinated with people, by people, and being connected with people. And so I kind of just carried that through undergrad and decided to carry on further into master's in psychology, specifically in counseling, and have worked in the field for a really long time and currently have established my own private practice. And in 2019, a few years quite after Ildiko and I met and the business we were both working at, we decided to kind of launch MezRe. And fast forward from 2019 to current date, here we are. And we're doing work that we're really passionate about. We're bringing each our unique talents. And there's just this perfect kind of synergy that really is the core and essence of what we do. So.
Yeah, gosh, I love that overview from both of you, because it's that word that you said at the end there, that synergy that you both bring to the table. The overarching thing that I love not only about both of you individually, but your company, MezRe, it's written right there in the header of your website, finding humanity in business to maximize potential. Obviously, both of you, psychology is such a core part of your background. Let's talk about it, because when people think about business, when they think about management, they think about things that, I'm going to throw a little bit of shade of Six Sigma, of lean. It's always like, how can we do this the most efficient way possible? But bringing that humanity back to it, why is that so important? Talk to us about the psychological aspect behind it, the human aspect behind your approach to business.
You want me to start?
Sure. Yes.
I think, Brian, just in the question and just the way in which you asked it kind of lends to why it's so important, right? Historically in the field of business, it's kind of that human part, that the mental health and wellness part was always kind of something that was separate and distinct from the workplace or the work performance or the work relationships. And it was kind of like that old mentality of, leave home at home before you walk into your work and put on your, go into work mode and just be that and do that. And then you can return to that other stuff when you leave the office. And so, there was just such a separation and a divide. And given where we're at today in a post-COVID world and this reality that we're living in, we can't survive and thrive in life, but specifically in businesses without that inclusion, without that integration. So bringing that humanity element, which is just the human, we're all humans, and the core part of being human is being in relationship with other. And that's kind of what it drives our approach, is that humanistic element, that relationship element, and everything starts there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yes, the way it came is basically based on our experiences, what we heard and what we saw from managers and leaders, different companies. The issues usually go around specific, maybe even industry-specific problems, but it's very rare when it comes to the realization of an involvement of a human being. And it's rare that people look behind the obvious problems that usually shows up when there's an issue at a company. They don't usually look behind it and find the human. So that basically where it came from, that what we would like to do is bring back that humanity. So humans are visible, and humans mean everybody at the company.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because I remember when I started my first business, I was 19 years old. It was the summer after my freshman year in business school. And it's funny because business school professors will use all these terms. And the first one that really stuck out to me was when they said B2B. They made that differentiation of B2B business versus B2C. And they talked about how our strategies are so different depending on if you're business to business or business to consumer. And I remember at that time, even at 19 years old, I was just like, well, even if you're B2B, you're still selling to people. It's you don't sell to a business. And so ultimately what works psychologically, whether it's marketing, sales, relationships, it's relevant across both of those spectrums. And I think that people forget that, which is why I can tell how intentional both of you are about the language that you use to talk about what you do. One word that kept coming up in my research of both of you and of your approach is that term of empathy. Talk to us about how we can bring that humanity back into business. What are the questions we need to ask? What are the things we need to do to show up in that way? And most importantly, what's that role that empathy plays? Because I know how important it is for both of you.
So I just want one quick thing, and then Jennifer's going to take it over. But so one thing about empathy, if you think about it, and what we again, based on our experiences, what we see and hear at certain workshops is that you need, as a leader, right? It's mostly you hear it during leadership trainings, that you have to be empathetic. And then the question is, okay, and you go home and become empathetic. So that's one of it's one of the reasons empathy is very important, but not just the way that you say that, yeah, you need to be empathetic.
Yeah, so I think we kind of get more into the nitty gritty, and Brian, I think that's it's of course that's the question that you landed upon, because it is part of what we have is our presence and what you've researched, and it is another core element that you've picked up on. So, it's really our model really starts with we have to kind of start with self first, right? One, which is to recognize our own humanness and all the perfect imperfections that make us human, right? And it's like putting a mirror up to yourself and having a really bold and honest reflection with self, knowing thyself wholly and fully. So I feel like that's the first part of kind of really being able to have empathy. And then the next part is in relationship with other. And so then it's like, once I have that piece, that understanding of self on a deep level, then I can extend outward and have an effort and intentionality and connecting with the person that's across from me or my audience, whether it's a consumer, my colleague, my manager, my son, wherever, right? Because we're carrying this with us wherever we go. And it's that connection piece. So empathy is driving that connection. And the first part is with self. The second part is being able to authentically connect with another person's experience. Part of that is through emotions, right? If I can hear what a person is going through and recognize that, or they're identifying that they might be sad or experiencing stress or hardship. And yes, I might be able to say, oh gosh, I know when I've felt that way too, and being able to connect there. But it's also so much bigger than that, right? It's not just an emotional experience. It's nonverbal communication, right? In which way am I connected to my audience in synergy, right? And just kind of visually what we're displaying and how I'm showing that I'm connected and present. So I could say much more, but I'll waste too much time. I hope that's enough just to kind of give you an idea.
Yeah, it for sure gets the party started, and I'm loving it because what I'm thinking is it's such a different conversation to be having, and that's why I love airing these for people to listen to all over the world, is because traditionally when we talk about business problems, we apply business tactics to be those solutions, and we love talking about conversion rates and marketing funnels and sales processes and all of those. But Jennifer, to hear you talk about, hey, focus on yourself first, then focus on your relationship with others, that's not the everyday solution that we talk about within the world of business. But it's fun for me because I already know part of the spoiler alert is that your solutions are talking about employee retention, building a company culture. We are talking about business problems, but with human-centered solutions. I'd love for you to go a little bit deeper into that, because I think it's all too easy for us, especially knowing our audience. They're business owners, they're entrepreneurs, just like the three of us here today, and they have real-life business problems. It almost feels like focusing on these human things are a distraction rather than actually being the solution that they are.
Yeah. I think that's common. That's kind of, it does feel like a distraction. And with time kind of as our most valuable commodity, it's like, well, we don't have time. That's kind of what our mind might tell us. Our mind might tell an owner or a manager when there's so many things to juggle and try to navigate to be successful. And yet you nailed it on the head, right? It's you can't afford to not spend time looking at that, because that's really where the root of solution lies for any types of problems, but specifically in this consulting practice and in business problems. So, you want to add something?
Yes, and so I got after some conversations, what I heard from people in management or leadership positions. After some discussions, what I hear is, okay, but here's the thing. I'm not a psychologist, right? And yes, you're not, and you're not supposed to be. That's not your job. You're in a whatever industry, right? You're not supposed to be a psychologist. You're not supposed to be a therapist. And it's not about becoming a therapist. It's not about losing your who you are as a leader. It's not about that. There are ways to connect and have relationship with others, and you don't have to become a therapist at the same time. So, for example, just our relationship, for example, okay? I'm sick right now, but I feel absolutely supported. She's supporting me because we have that relationship. Yeah, she's a therapist, but that's a different story. She's not a therapist to me at this moment. She's somebody who respects me for who I am and who decided to take maybe a little bit more of a load when I need it, when I'm sick. So that relationship does not mean that you need to become a therapist. You still can acknowledge your partner or the other person in the relationship that you're in.
Yeah, really well said. It's funny, Ildiko. It's something I tell people about all the time. I've had business partners along the years. I've been an entrepreneur for 16 years now. And I always tell people a business partnership is just like a marriage. You are also, I mean, not only are you emotionally involved, you just highlighted really strong teamwork. That's how any team is supposed to function, not just business partners, but even within a department at a larger corporation. And I think it's so important. And then on the business partner level, obviously you have a joint bank account, you're making financial decisions together. So it really is a marriage. There's so much of that human element that goes into it. I also want to bring a little bit of a spoiler alert here. Obviously, I've done the research, so listeners are going to get to benefit from it, is that I want to hear more about the way that the two of you combine those skills, talking about that partnership and that teamwork. Ildiko, I myself am fascinated about the concept of synesthesia. So take it away with that spoiler alert. Give us a little bit more insights into how the two of you solve these problems.
Okay, so just a little bit of background on synesthesia. It's a condition where senses cross over. One example of synesthesia is it's called grapheme color synesthesia. It's hard to even digest what it means, but when people see colors for certain or all numbers and letters, it's hard to understand. I don't understand. I have someone who has that. It's inheritable. I don't understand that part. I most likely have emotional synesthesia. What it means is I go through emotional experiences when I'm faced with problems or issues
or people.
Well, people, yes, through people. Yeah, I mean, this is why she's my partner. She's my other half. And what you need to know about that me is that I have that sense. I remember. However, I was never able to really use it. I used it when others needed it, but I was always very conscious about it because it sounds cuckoo. And it was really hard for myself to be true to myself and acknowledge that I have something that I use in my daily life. And it's okay to find out what that is. I took it as a curse to be honest, for many years. And the truth is to be able to use it and use it for the good of others is that this one over here, because she's the one who helped me be okay with it and experience all of it. So what it means for me is when I'm faced with some issues, and this is where our company comes in, right? We're talking about business related issues right now. When I'm faced with issues, something starts in me involuntarily. So I can't explain why or how. I go through certain emotions. I see a movie. My mind creates shapes and colors. That's what usually is, and I can't stop. It's just I can't stop talking about it and saying out loud solutions or ideas. I would stay with ideas because solutions are the end game. So I really do not want to say that I come up with solutions. No, I come up with, how would you say it? I come up with
images, ideas, visions,
and stuff.
Yeah.
And then she helps me translate it, because what happens that time is a huge cluster of everything in my head.
It's like almost like a flooding.
Yeah, it's like a flooding. So sometimes it's really hard for me to even express what I see, how I feel. So yeah, that's one way. One other way that we're so connecting is that she learned and I learned doing our how to say it to her, how to say it out loud, being who I am and not feeling bad about it, and for her to understand me and help me translate it and
utilize it,
and utilize it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically what it is.
Yeah, I love that. Jennifer, I'd love to get your perspective on it too then, because Ildiko said it so eloquently. She articulated it really well. Is that translation that then happens? Yeah. And I know that that's part of your expertise. So walk us through how you pick it up from there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's this is kind of something we've come to in hindsight, because I think as our relationship was developing and we were kind of learning about each other, this wasn't so clear in the beginning, right? But we knew we had something unique and special to offer and to put forth on a platform in the form of a consulting business. So, but yeah, you're right. It is that translation piece. And I think it started with, I think you'll agree with this statement. We've talked about this a lot before. I think what I was able to bring to Ildiko was just a sense of safety and security, because I wasn't judging her. I wasn't trying to exploit it. I wasn't trying to judge it. I wasn't trying to critique it. I was just really open to that. It's truly a gift, even though I know at times it's a curse as well. And so I feel like I was able to effectively provide an experience of safety and security so that it can kind of come full blossom. And then with my unique skill set, which is translation, communication, articulation, conceptualization, that's where that applicability piece comes in. That's when we're able to translate all of these, really, really, I mean, words really kind of fall short, but all of the ideas, I guess, if you will, and kind of then morph and twist and tweak and turn into real life, tangible, applicable solutions for who we work with. And that's just, it's kind of magical. And I know that's such a kind of frou-frou term, but it's magical when it happens. And we've lived through that enough times in the work that we've done together to really believe in how it works and what we're capable of bringing to the table. So, but yeah. I will say one quick thing. I would say, I was thinking about this a lot, is like, well, why am I able to do that so acutely?
Right.
And so there's so many reasons. I do have a background in psychology, a lot of education experience and training, and working with individuals in all different capacities. But I remembered when I was 15, I started working in the restaurant and service food industry. I started as a hostess, and all the way up until the time I was 30, I worked in that industry, off and on full time. It supported all of my college career. I paid for all my college career through that. I love that industry, and I will always have a special place in my heart. But just, attuning to people in a very kind of acute way, and being able at a really young age to kind of be able to develop that skill set just by working in that industry, and the way that that's grown and evolved through the years. I really feel like that's kind of left a big imprint on how I work today, how my brain works, how I am able to work with people. So I think that boded really well for kind of where we stand today and where I am today.
Yeah,
right.
I love that recognition. Go ahead, Ildiko. Do you want to add something there?
The only thing I wanted to add is that that's absolutely correct. Not too long ago, I asked her why. like even for me, saying out the things out loud, which to mention it usually correct. Still, it's mind blowing. It's like it's saying out loud things that sounds weird, and you don't want to be a weirdo. And I asked her why. Why do you believe me? Why do you take what I say as not so much a fact as a thing that can be developed or that it will have truth behind it? And you said what?
I don't know. What did I say?
She said, I'm sorry. She said, I don't really know. She said, I don't know. I just know it is what it is. I'm like, okay, I'll take it. And it works.
Yeah, I love that. And I think part of it really, well, there's two things that what I'm really hearing is one, Ildiko, to that point that you just made, I think the mark of a wise mind, the older that I get, and obviously in the grand scheme of the world, none of us are very old, but I think that the older I get, the more I realize that truly wise people are just open to entertaining. That's the verb that I always come back to is I'll entertain anything because there's little nuggets of knowledge and of truth in so many different things in life. And I think when we start rejecting ideas, when we start rejecting notions and questioning, could this be true? Well, it very well could be true. That's where we start really finding different solutions is the way that I'm going to phrase it. And then Jennifer, to your point, what I really hear is it's something I talk about so much. I'm an extreme extrovert and people always ask me like, how are you so good on the fly having all these conversations? And my answer to them always is just people reps. I have a lot of reps when it comes to talking to people. And Jennifer, I think that your experience within the restaurant industry, it's exactly that. Every interaction was a people rep. And, you know, thousands and thousands of reps later, you've really honed your craft there. So I absolutely love hearing that. And speaking of honing that craft, I think what's so incredible about the way that you two operate is, I've said it before, that you're very intentional about your language, but I also see you're very strategic in the way that you solve these problems, specifically for businesses. Whatever realm of business we talk about is that it is that customized approach that we talked about at the top of this episode. And I love that phrase. I don't know who coined it about whether it's coaching or consulting, is that we can't always read the label from inside the jar. You two have that ability to walk into a company and what they may not even realize is the problem, you can identify it and then strategically put together a plan to deal with it. Talk to us about that assessment period, because I feel like a lot of times we go down the path of thinking, oh, this is the problem, when it really turns out that it's actually something else entirely.
Correct. You can go ahead. You want me to?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so sorry, I'm going to do my best. So one way we are actually different from other companies is just what we were talking about. What I have, what she has. So let's say we walk into a company, right? And let's say, for example, they have an issue with an employee. Let's say the employee is not up for the test, underperforming for whatever reason. So normally, a company would, or the people who are in charge would relay it as, what should we do with this person? So the first question is, what is your goal? So if your goal is to keep that person because you see the value in that person, the person is really good at whatever work they do, but cannot keep a calendar or not good at organizing or late on deadlines or whatever, then if you decided that you want to keep but first is the goal. Do you want to keep the person or you don't care if the person is gone? Because our approach is different in both ways. If you want to keep that person, let's say our approach is to assess the situation. Why is that person is underperforming? What's going on in that person's life? Not a lot of times personal life comes up, but it happens, you know? That's very important, how the person perceives their daily lives, or what is the relationship between the manager and the that person? What is the relationship, or what is the situation? What is the culture of the company? We can assess all of that, and then so here's where our uniqueness comes in. We go in, and I get those things that we were just talking about it, and then Jennifer takes her background and education and assess it from that part too. So we assess it from two different points.
Mm-hmm.
And then we collaborate and we assess the whole situation, the whole person, not just certain points of what's going on. And so our goal is to make sure that there is employee retention, so people don't leave because of misunderstanding of a situation, that it be relationship or whatever comes up, and to help create an actual culture at the company where everybody feels secure in where they're at. Anything?
Yeah, no, I think that was just, you said it, just kind of highlighting the combination of, it's a multimodal approach when we're doing an assessment, and it can be quantitative measures, right? So using scales that we've established for different purposes, where there's a quantitative value or scoring or whatever, using qualitative measures. So we also devised open-ended questionnaires to go in, whether we're interviewing an employee or talking with ownership or management. And that's kind of more of bringing my background in psychology and integrating that into the assessment process, alongside this kind of special gift that Ildi comes in of just kind of that intuitive understanding and seeing and knowing. So I would say that's probably the bulk of our assessment work.
And also just want to add that the assessments, we do our assessments, like we put it together based on the need. So it's not something that you necessarily can just, copy off of Google. Mm-hmm. We assess the situation, the way we assess it, and then we create measures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really appreciate those insights, especially because, Jennifer, it's something that there is that phrase in business, what gets measured gets managed. And a lot of people are very keen to measure those. And the fact that you highlight qualitative and quantitative, I think it's so important, because we all, again, we come back to just kind of the franticness of running a business, of managing a team, of managing employees, of building a company culture. We have so many responsibilities that we don't always take the time to get that feedback, whether it is feedback via numbers or feedback via those questions that you talked about. And to that point, I know we're running out of time here today, but gosh, I want to squeeze a little bit more genius out of you both. I'm firmly of the belief that the answers that we're going to get in life, in business, in relationships, in anything are only as good as the questions that we ask. Talk to us about some of those questions that you both ask, whether it's in your assessment, whether it's gauging, the happiness of a team, whether it is building a company culture. What are some of those questions that you turn to that you consistently find, gosh, these bring out the best answers in people?
That's a really good question, Brian.
Okay, so it's not easy to answer that question, to tell you the truth, because that would be the answer that we have something ready and go in, which this is exactly what we don't do. We don't have something that that someone could copy,
like a template that we carry
We don't
everywhere.
have a template that somebody could just take and go and do what we do. We don't have that. So what we do is we go in first. Really, it might be hard to visualize, but we do what we do. We go in and we assess what we get intuitively. All the other, we have questions, but not necessarily written questions that we right before we go there. But the questions come up. For example, we can focus on cultural differences, right? It really depends on what we find. when we go somewhere. So that can be a specific problem that they relate to us, but it doesn't mean that we focus on that problem. We focus on the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So we don't have a template. So, but what I will say, Brian, is this, is I kind of, I hear your question loud and clear, and I kind of start with kind of what we were talking about, the empathy thing earlier. I think for me, I try to step into my role in this, in our business with beginner's mind, kind of that Zen practice of beginner's mind. And I heard you kind of speaking to that earlier is what do I have to learn from this situation? Mm-hmm. And so I ask myself that question, and I lead with that, because then I don't have a scripted set of questions that I need to get my answers to. It's a little bit more broad. I just kind of created some expansion, and it's probably more of an intuitive led process. What I will say is in addition to that, we do, I would say, it's a combination of interviewing skills, of course. And I think there's oftentimes, we are going to ask some standardized questions that consultants would ask at large. But I think it's really the frame of mind that we're stepping into companies that's going to be a little different than perhaps what you'll find with the next consulting firms on the in your Google search.
And I just want to add to that we were mentioning the idea that we have is that actually no company is the same. So we don't use the same hat for all the hats, right? So when we go in somewhere, or we entertain the idea to work for somebody, we are open. We're open to anything. We don't make prejudgment of what their problem is, even if it's similar or sounds similar to another company's problem, because the people who work for that company might be a totally different population. So our approach would be different.
I'll tell you what, you two might feel like you sidestepped the question as far as coming up with those concrete questions, but I'm going to applaud both of you, because I think you're preaching to the choir here, because that, to me, this is part of the secret sauce of our show here. And listeners know this over 800 plus episodes of us doing this, is that no two episodes have ever had the same questions. And you both know this as our guests here today, is that there are no pre-planned questions. I remember when I was 19, starting my first business, it was the very early days of business podcasting, and I would tune into these shows and they would ask the same questions every episode, and in my head I was like, wait, but these guests, you should have gone deeper there, because they have so much brilliance there that maybe your last guest, it made more sense to go deeper into another area. So I think that this is an approach actually that more entrepreneurs need to take on board. Is it harder, quote unquote? Well, maybe, but really, Jennifer, you said the word intuition, is that we need to trust our intuition to take us to those places, and not just intuition, but experience. But Ildiko, you talked about, leveraging past data of examples that we've seen, but also remaining open to the fact that no two situations are exactly alike. So I think that actually gives a lot of insight into your approach and your methodology. So I really appreciate those insights. With that as a segue, listeners also know the only canned question that I do have, and it's because I love this takeaway and I never know where guests will take it, is we talked about a lot of amazing things here today, and you both have introduced so many ways for us to explore our own inner humanity in the way that we show up in business, but also the methodology in which we solve problems and the benefits of having external people like yourselves to look at those problems and help us navigate them. So with all of those things in mind, listeners, we all get the benefit of two answers here today. I'd love to hear from each of you. What's that one takeaway that you hope every listener walks away from today's episode and says, you know what Jennifer and Ildiko said, I want to think about that more, and I want to incorporate that into my life and business and leadership and all the ways that I show up?
Okay, so I want to start with saying that maybe look up our new approach that we created. It's called respect-driven approach, because we we do use that. We based our approach on our relationship. Being respectful is the basis of any relationships. You can learn from it, and you can find synergy at the end. So that would be one. And I give you another one. Again, what I already said, decide your goal, what your goal is. Before you try to find a solution, find your goal. If you don't like the goal because it doesn't fit with your personality, look inside and then create a new goal.
I would say, gosh, if there's a takeaway, Brian, I really appreciated the candid questions. I had no idea what you were going to ask, and I did love kind of the intuitive direction that this took. So, given what we've talked about, and given the audience, right, entrepreneurship, I would say that the takeaway is be bold enough to do the self work as you're leading forward in life, in career endeavors, but in just life endeavors. Be bold enough to do the self work. I would say starting MezRe Consultants, I was my own biggest enemy. I just didn't have the confidence. I thought, who was I to kind of be a business consultant? And I really had to get out of my way, but I had to kind of face my demons and do a lot of extensive, I had to put the mirror up, and really face that and work through the barriers. A lot of them were kind of internally imposed. So I think I had to be bold to step out of the shadows and kind of really take full ownership of what I have to offer, but what MezRe is, and taking full ownership of what we can do, and feeling really confident in that. So that's the takeaway from today's talk.
Yeah, I love all of those insights. Honestly, I'm going to give both of you a shout out because I find so consistently that the best business advice is also great life advice. I think that the more that we show up in a positive way in service and to provide value to others in business, it's also the best way that we can all go forth and live our lives. And I think at the root of all of it, whether it's business or life, is obviously humanity. So if the bar that you wanted to set today was finding humanity in business to maximize potential, I think we've arrived there. And on that note, I know that listeners will be keen to go even deeper into your methodologies, the way that both of you think. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go to find out more about your company, MezRe Consultants, as well as all the great work that you both do?
Yeah. It's simple. It's MezReConsultants.com. So we have a variety of different pages. We talk, there's images of our logo that describes the respect-driven approach very deeply. So go to MezReConsultants.com, look up the leadership and empowerment page. It really kind of captures what we talked about today. Both Ildiko and I have LinkedIn pages as well, so you'll find us there.
Yes, listeners, you already know the drill. We are including all of those links down below in the show notes, wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode. Their business website is MezReConsultants.com. That's MezRe as in MEZRE Consultants.com. You'll find that link down below, as well as links to their personal LinkedIns. If you want to reach out, have incredible people in your network that are thought leaders and doing big things to make positive changes of bringing that humanity back to finding these business solutions, reach out to them. Otherwise, Jennifer and Ildiko, on behalf of myself and all the listeners around the world, thanks so much for joining us here on the show today.
Thank you very much for having us.